They told us to work hard. They told us to get good grades. They told us that if we just studied enough, followed the rules, and landed a safe job, we'd live comfortably. That was the promise, the lesson drilled into millions of students across classrooms worldwide. But here's the ugly truth. It was a myth. Because schools don't teach wealth. They teach obedience. They prepare us to be employees, not owners. To follow instructions, not create opportunities. To depend on a paycheck, not to build assets. Think about it. How many hours did you spend learning about history dates, complex equations, or the structure of a cell? And how many hours did you spend learning how to manage debt, invest money, build wealth, or even file your taxes? The answer is painful. Schools ignore money, the very tool every adult needs daily. And so, generation after generation walks out of school ready to work, but unprepared to live. This is the biggest money myth schools teach us. That hard work alone will make you rich. It won't. And unless you break free from that myth, the system will keep you working until your last breath. Picture graduation day. Caps fly into the air, parents cheer, teachers smile with pride. Everyone tells the graduates the same thing. You're ready for the real world. But are they? Because the moment those students step off the stage, reality hits. Rent is due. Bills arrive. Credit card offers flood the mailbox. Student loans wait like a shadow that will follow them for decades. And yet, no one taught them how to handle it. They know how to solve trigonometry problems, but not how interest rates quietly drain their future. They can recite historical battles, but not how to build a budget. They wrote essays on Shakespeare, but never learned how taxes work or why investing early can change everything. This isn't an accident. The system wasn't designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you manageable, to push you toward jobs that pay just enough to survive, but not enough to escape. And so, most young adults begin their journey already trapped, armed with knowledge they may never use, but unarmed against the single force that controls their freedom: money. The myth they were sold. That knowledge alone equals wealth. That good grades and hard work guarantee success. The truth. Without financial literacy, grades don't matter. Effort doesn't matter. You'll just work harder for less. Think back to school. What were the lessons drilled into us, over and over? Raise your hand before you speak. Follow the rules. Don't question the system. Do your homework on time. These aren't lessons for wealth. They're lessons for compliance. Schools train you to be punctual, obedient, and efficient, exactly the traits of a perfect employee. But here's what they never taught: how to start a business, how to negotiate a salary, how to invest your first paycheck, how to make money work for you instead of trading time for it. Instead, the message was always the same. Study hard, get a degree, find a safe job. That job will give you a salary, benefits, maybe even a pension. Work for 40 years and someday, if you're lucky, you can retire. But here's the myth. In today's world, that formula no longer works. Pensions are disappearing. Jobs aren't safe. Inflation eats your savings. The ladder they told you to climb doesn't even reach the roof anymore. The system doesn't want you to think like an owner. Owners question. Owners create. Owners build wealth. Employees follow. And schools were built to produce employees. That's the biggest money myth of all. That being a good worker is enough to make you rich. Meet Sarah. She was the model student. Straight A's, perfect attendance, college degree. She followed the script exactly. Studied hard, landed a safe office job, worked long hours, never questioned the path. 20 years later, she looks around. The paycheck barely covers her mortgage. Her student loans still haunt her. Retirement feels impossible. Despite doing everything right, she feels trapped, living paycheck to paycheck, with no wealth to show for decades of effort. Now meet David. He also followed the rules. After 35 years at the same company, he expected comfort. Instead, he was laid off in a round of downsizing. No pension, no backup plan, just a small 401k that inflation devours year by year. Both Sarah and David believed the myth that hard work inside the system leads to financial freedom. But the system was never built for that. It rewards just enough to keep you working, never enough to set you free. And their stories are not unique. Millions of workers give their best years, their health, their energy, only to retire broke, tired, and dependent on government checks that barely cover groceries. This is the result of the money myth schools teach us. Obedience over ownership, labor over leverage, survival over freedom. The truth: if you only follow the rules, the game is designed for you to lose. Now compare that to Michael. He wasn't the top student. His grades were average. His teachers said he was unfocused. But instead of only chasing diplomas, he chased opportunities. While classmates studied theory, he studied money. He read books on investing, learned how credit works, watched how small businesses ran in his neighborhood. At 20, instead of buying the newest phone, he bought a used vending machine and placed it in a busy barbershop. Within months, it was paying him while he slept. He kept repeating the process. By 30, he owned several small businesses. By 40, he had investments that grew without his daily effort. Michael understood something Sarah and David never did. Wealth doesn't come from being the best employee. It comes from building assets, things that make money whether you're working or not. The difference isn't intelligence. It isn't luck. It's perspective. Sarah and David believed the myth schools taught. Work hard, follow the system, and you'll be secure. Michael saw the system for what it was, a trap, and he chose to step outside of it. This is the great divide. Two groups of people, same world, same economy. One clings to the myth and ends poor. The other questions it and ends free. The harsh truth: the system doesn't reward those who follow blindly. It rewards those who build beyond it. Why don't schools teach us about money? Why do we graduate knowing how to analyze poetry, but not how to balance a budget? Why do we spend years on equations we'll never use, but never a single class on investing or building wealth? The answer is uncomfortable, because it benefits the system. When people don't understand money, they depend on jobs. They depend on banks. They depend on governments. And dependency is control. Financial literacy is power. Imagine if every student left school knowing how to avoid debt, grow investments, and build assets. How many would still work 40 years for a paycheck? How many would sign predatory loans or swipe credit cards endlessly? The truth is, the economy needs employees more than it needs owners. It needs workers to fill offices, not entrepreneurs to create competition. And so, the system trains obedience, not independence. This isn't conspiracy, it's design. Schools were modeled after factories during the industrial age. The goal wasn't to create free thinkers. It was to create efficient workers. Bells signaled shifts. Rows of desks mirrored factory lines. The focus wasn't freedom, but productivity. And while the world changed, the system didn't. Which is why students leave knowing everything about the world, except how to master their own money. The myth survives because it keeps the system alive. The result: generations trapped in the same cycle. Students graduate, step into the workforce, and repeat the script. Work hard, spend most of what you earn, save what's left, if anything. They hand their best years to jobs that barely cover the rising cost of living. By the time retirement comes, there's little to show. Meanwhile, wealthy families play a different game. They pass down assets, not just advice. A child in a rich household doesn't just inherit money, they inherit financial literacy. They're taught how credit works, why assets matter, how compounding turns small amounts into fortunes. So while one family spends decades chained to paychecks, another multiplies wealth across generations. This isn't about intelligence. It's about exposure. The poor are taught myths. Hard work is enough. The wealthy are taught truths. Money works harder than you ever can. And schools, by ignoring financial literacy, keep the divide alive. They graduate millions of skilled workers, and only a handful of wealth builders. This is why inequality grows. Not only because of wages, but because of knowledge. Knowledge that is deliberately left out of classrooms. The myth schools teach isn't harmless. It's a trap that ensures most people trade decades of labor, while a few trade assets that keep paying forever. Here's the breaking point. The myth says, work hard, get good grades, land a job, and you'll be rich. But look around. Millions of people work harder than ever. Nurses pulling double shifts, teachers grading until midnight, workers grinding 60 hours a week. And yet they're still broke, still drowning in debt, still living paycheck to paycheck. Hard work alone doesn't guarantee wealth. If it did, the hardest workers in society would be the richest. But the richest aren't always the hardest workers. They're the ones who own assets. Assets don't get tired. Assets don't call in sick. Assets don't ask for raises. They work 24 hours a day, compounding wealth while their owners sleep. That's the truth schools never taught us. Wealth is not about trading more time. It's about owning things that pay you back. Financial literacy is the missing link. Without it, a bigger paycheck just means bigger expenses. With it, even a modest income can be transformed into lasting wealth. The myth of hard work equals wealth keeps 90% of people poor. The reality is, financial literacy plus assets equals freedom. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter with money, something school never prepared you for. So here's the biggest money myth schools teach us: that hard work alone will make you rich. It sounds noble. It feels fair. But it's a lie. Hard work pays bills. Financial literacy builds freedom. And the system never wanted you to know the difference. That's why they never taught you how credit cards trap you, how compounding grows wealth, how to build assets that pay you back. They wanted you to be a worker, not an owner, an employee, not an investor. But now you know the truth, and the choice is yours. You can keep playing by the rules they gave you, work harder, spend more, save what's left, and hope retirement doesn't crush you. Or you can break the cycle. Learn the language of money. Build assets. Take control. Because here's the harsh reality. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your boss. Not the government. Not the system. Wealth is not handed out in diplomas. It is built by those who question the myth, flip the script, and refuse to settle for the life they were taught to accept. Hard work is honorable, but it's not enough. The future belongs to those who understand money and use it as a tool, not a trap.